Hello, and welcome to Work Cookie, our weekly gathering of IOs, HRs, recruiters, and one actor, as we try to make the world of work just a little bit better. And for the next 3 weeks, Emmy, you're going to be leading our discussion. And today, we're actually going to be talking about, let me scroll here. Oh, yes, embracing technology while keeping people first. And technology is also a interesting, subject for us who work because I'm old enough I can remember when I got my first desktop computer, one of those little Apple square boxes.
Was it that little though? Was it that little?
um, yeah, it was one of the first like really little ones. It weighed probably about 80 pounds. But I remember, you'd get to work in the morning, you'd start up your computer, and then you'd go for coffee because it was going to take at least 15 minutes for it to warm up. And we were told that technology was going to make our lives much better and we were going to have much more freedom. And even though we weren't talking about work balance, work life balance at that point, the indication was that, it was going to make our lives better. And here we are now. Technology has taken over. We've got social media out there that we don't know what's happening. And we've gone through an election now where social media, the computer played a lot of a big role. Technology is there. We're in the midst of a technology either evolution or revolution, and we don't know where it's going. We're just kind of holding on and praying for the best.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is really where this month is going to start, right? Because a lot of people don't know where it's going, and I think we have to, as the creators and the owners, master the tech, right, and start building some of that direction. And so I'm really excited to bring this topic. It's really around human-centric ethics and our technology, and so those two topics are really going to collide this month and blend in what we're talking about. And I'm really excited to also bring some guests in to just talk about it in the practical sense and what's happening in their workspaces and how they're making that happen. Because you're right, we do need to understand where we're going with it. And just a couple of weeks ago, Elon Musk predicted that by 2040, we were going to have more humanoid robots than humans on Earth. So that's an interesting prediction there. And just last week, we had the U.S. military contract $60 billion towards AI drones. So these things are happening, right? They're happening. This isn't futuristic. This is present time. And this is affecting our everyday workplaces all the way into our governments and just kind of our global landscape. And so really bringing it and embracing it is going to need to happen. So my topic this month is really about human-centric ethics in that, though. How do we keep our humans elevated? How do we enhance humans and humanness with our technology and also embrace it, right? So these are some risk versus opportunities paradoxes that we'll be talking about, and really excited to bring this topic.
Well, it is really interesting, and I've talked to different organizations, and some are out there. It's coming, and artificial intelligence is the new thing, and we're going to embrace it. And I've talked to other organizations who, when you mention AI at all, they're like, I didn't know. We're not going to have that conversation. We're not going down that path. It is so dangerous and scary. We're going to wait till everybody else. And I'm going, so you're going to be the last to the party? Is that
Yes. Yeah, so
so?
that's right.
So should we just go out there and embrace it and just, come with a plan, but hope for the best? Or, what do you say to those organizations that are going, maybe in 5 years we'll jump on the AI bandwagon?
Right. No, so it's even beyond AI, right? So I want to start there. We think about things today in that AI kind of buzzword, but we've got robotics, we've got all kinds of other modern tech out there that is not just AI focused, right? Or robotics with AI even, right? So there's a combination of a lot of different kinds of tech out there. And so what the research really is showing now is that leadership, one, is critical to that. It's shaping how we work, it's shaping the future of workplaces, but leaders have to foster that sort of an environment that does embrace change in technology because it's here and it's imminent. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and it's a matter of what. And so, what are you going to embrace? What purpose, and how are you going to look about it? And how are you fostering that in the leadership sense? And the other thing that we really want to make sure as we're embracing some of this technology, it is making a lot of impacts. Recently we had an actors and writers strike, right? So maybe Tom, you remember that, right? It's technology related, right? AI related. Even more recently was a the shipmen's strike that happened in the United States. We had a lot of automation discussions behind the scenes. They couldn't really negotiate the automation contracts there behind the scenes, and they had a lot of robotics and automation that they were trying to bring in, and that was brought that industry to a halt for a short period of time. And people were panicking, right? These are their overseas products weren't going to make it to them, and the country was panicking, thinking about how technology was going to impact that industry. And so having a human-focused purpose is really going to be where I bring all of these topics to the table. And today I've actually invited Ken Durbin, who I'm really excited to introduce. He is the Assistant Director of Aviation at the Sugar Land Regional Airport in Sugar Land, Texas. And that's actually where I live, so happy to bring some Texas folks, especially from the land of sugar. And for as long as he can remember, he has always looked at the sky. He built and flew experimental ultraflight aircraft when he was 19 years old. And he eventually earned his wings of gold from the United States Navy, where he would spend 27 years flying over 6 of the 7 seas. In 2016, he accepted that position where he's at now at the airport, and is charged with ensuring the operational safety, maintenance, and sustainability of all airport assets. So, Ken, welcome. I am happy to share this topic with you and to bring you to the table to talk about embracing technology while keeping people first.
Morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So I'm going to kind of start us off with some questions, but I know some other folks may throw some questions your way, including Tom here. I guess we'll start with just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing innovatively to bring technology and integrate technology into the airport there.
So, as the assistant director here, my main focus is operations and maintenance. We are a federally obligated airport, which means we are burdened by a lot of regulation from the FAA. And so our operations division makes sure that we're in compliance with all that regulation, and our maintenance division makes sure that we fix everything that the operations folks points out that needs to be fixed. And we have a limited workforce, a limited labor pool, and it's going to kind of stay that way for what the foreseeable future. And so we are very guarded about how we embrace technology and the AI. The AI brings a whole bunch of other different risks as far as a government entity, a municipal that's open to open records requests. And then you're going to get, is it AI generated data or is it human generated data? And then there's the liabilities of all that. And then what you leave is open source. So we're working through all of that AI governance policy right now. The city of Sugar Land does not shy away from those challenges. We are not one of those that's going to say, well, we'll wait 5 years and see what happens. So from my point of view, here at the airport, I'm looking to maintain the production rates that I have to maintain with all the different things that we do, and I'm looking for the best efficiencies to do that. So, so we embrace technology here. That's kind of what we do.
Awesome. I guess as a follow-up to that, I just know that we've had previous conversations around this, and so I'd like to ask you about the human-centric approach that you use. I know that that's the way that you've led there at the airport and the way you've embraced the technology. What inspired you to really use that human-centric leadership approach when you're bringing in some of the new?
So I think I get complacent a lot of times with the human centric portion of that. When you mentioned this topic, I thought, oh, I'm the last one to think about the people. But really, truly, I think the innovation, the technology would be nothing without the people. It's driven by the people. Change is constant. Change is something that a lot of people resist, of course, because it's different and new. But every day we get up and we face a new day. a change from yesterday. So it's a mind shift kind of change. But I assumed, and I told you this when you first reached out. I assumed that some of the technology we embraced would make lives better for the people that I'm charged with taking care of, and that was an assumption that I learned very quickly that wasn't shared by everyone else. And so it kind of drove that human centric, hey, wake up, hey, ask them first. So I think we kind of we ebb and flow as far as keeping the folks in mind. But that is something we've done here. We had to regroup a couple times, but we've gone back and said, what do you think about this?
Can you share a little bit about some of the technology that you guys have embraced, and some of the experiments that you've made with that in the workplace there?
Again, so I'll tell you that I'm right or wrong, I'm product focused, production focused. I would have been that guy who said, I don't need that horseless carriage. The hay is free. And I've got my own horse. I swear, and it cracks me up that they think I'm the innovative guy here. But right now we grabbed onto an autonomous floor cleaning machine, and you go, what? We have a lot of large hangars out here. Those hangars, those floors have to be maintained. And so it was a labor intensive work. And we pull the planes out, we hit the button, the robot knows where it needs to go, and it cleans the floor. There's been some challenges with that because it's a LiDAR driven machine. And we put 25-foot high arched windows in our premier hangar out here because we want to show off. And that light is interfering with the LiDAR. So we're working through some issues. We're putting some cones out so it doesn't get lost. The most recent effort, and they should be here within the next couple of months, are 3 autonomous mowers. So you're going to have robots running around on an airfield with planes coming and going. And in fact, when we brought them out for the pilot to look at the test, the pilots got out of the aircraft and were taking photos of this horseless, or this manless, I guess you'd say, mower out there that was mowing the grass right in front of them against the ramp. But we're looking to crawl, walk, run with that. We think we can do this safely, and we see the potential in embracing that. So 3 mowers on a good day. I've got 5, and I say this all the time: 5 butts in seats mowing the grass. We look to augment that with these autonomous mowers.
Awesome. I guess kind of also as a follow-up to that, what are some of those challenges that you think you're really facing doing some of this embracing, and also the challenges doing some of the human focus in this?
So I'll get to the human focus. I appreciate mowing my own grass at home because you see chaos and disorder with the jagged grass, and then you pass over it and it looks like a carpet. I like seeing that the effort, right? I did not expect. I've mowed. I wouldn't ask anybody here to do anything I haven't done. I've been in the big tractors out there all day. Not a lot, but enough to get an appreciation for it. And I did not expect that people, our people specifically, would appreciate the time that they spend just droning along cutting the grass. So that was kind of a surprise. And they came back. They pushed back kind of hard originally. Again, that people focus. It comes and goes. And we were allowed to. We had the opportunity to sit down and talk through it. And there was a lot of apprehension about losing their jobs. No, we've got plenty of work here. We'll. So what I see from it is it's a force multiplier. We've got about 13 people in the maintenance division, and again, 5 to 6 of them mowing Monday through Friday, 7 days, 7 hours a day. But post-COVID, with the focus on the work-life balance, we've expanded the number of PTO days, the number of sick days, the number of holidays. And so of my 13 personnel, 2.5 are given up to time off, sick time. That impacts the production. Well, I can't hire 2 more people. And if I do hire 2 more people, I'll end up with that additional PTO, and it won't be 2 more people. So this augmentation with these mowers cuts into those labor hours that are lost or given up to those other things. So that's what I'm really looking. I'm looking at maximizing what I've got here.
How did you address some of those concerns you mentioned? I know you talked about the mowers specifically, and I'm not sure if there were other concerns initially before you implemented the first robotic to help augment your staff. How have you helped them with their concerns and their fears about either losing jobs or changing their jobs and the roles?
Yeah, that's a great question, and Tom spoke to it a little bit earlier. Um, we're not going to be that company or that entity that waits 5 years to watch other people make the mistakes and learn from that. We're going to trip over our own strings, and we're going to learn on the way and pivot. So we went to them and asked, what are your concerns? Well, I'm going to lose my job. No, you're not going to lose your job. Well, I kind of like mowing. Well, we bought the model that is both manually and autonomously operated. So the idea is that you'll operate one while you're operating three autonomously. So we kind of adjusted our approach. Now that's at the run phase. We're not going to just throw somebody into operating one manually and monitoring one that's autonomous. That's where they'll grow. And then the other part we talked about was these are largely blue collar laborers that are doing this stuff. We're bringing a technology and a skill set that they're going to be the first ones to have. They're going to be involved in it, learn from it, grow from it. And I tell them, you may not want to stay at this airport for the next 10, 15 years. This is a skill set that you'll put in your resume and you'll learn, and we will help you through it. We don't expect you to know it. And their attitudes, especially the one there's always one. Their attitudes shifted and they've embraced it. We've already bought the iPads and loaded it with the software. Again, the units will be delivered within the next 2 months, and then they'll do it. And it's really cool. You can get in the unit and drive the perimeter, and at that point you've set the plan, and then you just hit go. It automatically starts, and you walk away. You've got a kill switch, and then it does the mowing, and it will tell you how long it will take. The biggest thing, I've been looking at autonomous mowers for 5 years, and the technology and the cost benefit analysis wasn't there. I needed to know that we could afford this, and then I would meet my labor cost per acre projections or some kind of savings. And it wasn't until we started looking at the PTO and the potential for actually augmenting the workday. I mean, if this thing can work past 1600, then we've just added workforce, right? So everybody else takes off at 6, and this thing runs for another 2 hours, cuts another 2 acres or whatever. Then that's a good thing.
Now that you have been the one, right, that's not waiting 5 years, now that you've been the one that's not only learning from others, what might be something you would share with other leaders or other organizations to help them with their technology integration, but also keeping that people first mindset, right, or that human touch and approach to bringing in their new technologies? It may not be robotics, right? It might be AI. It might be some other kind of modern technology that is going to be more helpful for their purpose. But what advice might you give to other leaders or to other organizations that are really in that crossroad point right now?
So the joke around here is I don't know what I'm doing, and so I don't know what I'm not doing. And I think it's a joke, but it's also pretty true. If you go to the people with the hands on the problem and ask them how best to improve, change, adapt, they're the ones that'll have the answer, and they're the ones that'll tell you why it won't work or this will work. Now you need to expand that because you're going to get a guy like me who says I got all the hay and horse I need, so I'm good. But you will eventually find those that will help you and kind of shape the vision and where you want to go. And they'll embrace it. I mean, if it's their problem to fix and they own it, they'll embrace it and take it. It may not be exactly what you thought you wanted. It may not be exactly the where you thought, but you have to be able to be flexible enough to, well, let's see how this works. Don't crush dreams on the way. That's the biggest part of it is letting them. And now, I mean, the good part about the autonomous mowers is they're embracing it. They're asking me when they're going to be here, and how are we going to, and right now what they're trying to do is map out. We have 600 acres here, just under 1 square mile, 639 acres. and they're mapping out the plans on how to employ these things. Now, they're doing it without the mowers, and they're doing it wrong because they don't have the mowers, but they'll have a start where they can shift to later on. So I guess the real thing is you just have to, you got to bring them in early and say, hey, what do you think about this? You've got to ask those questions. What do you think? How would you address these issues?
I love that. And I think one of the words that comes to mind as you were talking there is adaptability, right? And embracing the ability to adapt as you learn. One of the areas I've worked in the technology world has been the buzzword agile, right? But agility really just means responsive to change, right? And responding to things as you learn or responding as you receive feedback. So it just really sounds like you've embraced that adaptability part of agility, right? And making sure that you're being responsive
I,
to.
I, I appreciate that. So the city's gone through a real self-inspection over the last 2 years, 3 years, and they redid their vision and mission and goals, and they came up with Blaze, Trailblazers, and Blaze. And the A is adaptability. You will be adaptable and engage change and figure new ways. We're not afraid of making mistakes. We have gone from a zero tolerance for mistakes culture to a you need to brag about the last mistake you made culture in the last 2 to 3 years. It's been really great to be a part of that and to see it. I mean, you don't learn if you don't make mistakes. If everything went perfect for you all the time, you would learn nothing, right? You'd be pretty lucky, but you learn nothing. So
I love that describing a cultural change, right? An entire shift to the way that you work and the culture that you bring as a leader to the organization. I think it has to start right with the leadership and fostering a culture that allows that allows experimentation, that allows people to embrace their mistakes. So I love hearing that it's, that the shift in the culture from don't make a mistake to brag about the last mistake you made, right? That's almost something I wish to bring to every single workplace I ever work for the rest of my life. That's that sort of spirit there. And so definitely want to also invite others into the conversation if there's any questions you might have for Ken or any comments you might have. I think the adaptability culture is something that I'll call culture of innovation. One of the things that I'm going to be launching here in the world that's research based soon, starting in January in a couple of months, is a new leadership model to lead in workspaces, to embrace technology and keep those humans first and keep that human ethics focus first. And that's one of the elements, culture of innovation. And it's a buzzword a bit, right? Innovation, but it really means adaptability and bringing change, experimentation, and just that mindset of we can really embrace the mistakes, quote unquote, right? And learn from them. I love that.
So, I'm part of that is I've told my leadership that I'm an 80-20 guy, which means I'll start running before I learn to walk or crawl. We'll get the 80% solution. And it's because it's based on it. I'm at A, I need to get to B. By the time we get to 80%, we've learned so much that B isn't where we needed to go or where we wanted to go. It's actually C. And so at the 20% mark, we pivot. And if you sit around waiting for that 20% to complete the picture so you can move out, you're going to go to B, and B may not be where you want to go. So there's that adaptability, the pivot that we do, and that comes from those mistakes along the way. Again, I don't know what I'm doing, so we ask how are we going to do this, and we have no idea, so we just start making it up as we go, and we start out, and we'll get to that 80% solution, and then find out we want to go somewhere else.
Ken, I'd love to ask you because it is scary, and the first thing that pops into my head is, oh my God, a robot's taking my job. But it sounds like you got the communication aspect correct. But I've got to ask: was there a plan that you implemented, or did you just stay open and we're going to keep communicating with our frontline people? So, can you talk a little bit about that and maybe some of the lessons that you did learn?
Sure, sure, I'd love to. So, again, I'm production focused, and I knew what their production rates were based on their skill set, based on their equipment, based on whether they had a good or bad day. We mow anywhere from 2.48 to 2.7 acres an hour, or yes, an hour. Some guys are pulling in 5, some guys are pulling in 1.1, but that was our production rate. So we got to a point where our fleet of diesel 72-inch manual mowers needed to be replaced, and I've been looking for the last 5 years. The technology wasn't there. The robotic mower industry was looking at two things. They were looking at golf courses, and they were looking at the independent contractor. And I'm over there going, hey, hello. And I'm going to these meetings since 2019 saying, hey, I'm an airport. We got plenty of, most airports do. And we're required to keep the grass down as part of our wildlife management program. All this mowing, all this turf management is about keeping the food source away from the hawk that's going to end up hitting the plane. So that's what it's all about. And I was looking at production. So I thought I would just replace what we had. My production's good, but I wanted this autonomous capability because I knew that my labor force was going to pretty much stay the same size. We've got more work than we can do. We spend about 45% of my current labor budget per year because we're in South Texas and the grass grows 10 months a year. We spend about 45% of my labor budget on mowing. That's a lot of mowing. So if I could save 8%, which is what the projection is right now, that's a pretty huge shift. So that's how I kind of got to that, was trying to find a way. And again, I've studied it for 5 years. It's taken a while. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that communication I guess what it was. The communication along the way was, I thought I had an idea. I thought I had the plan. It was too much status quo. Sure, it was new equipment, but it was too much status quo. And it wasn't until they said, hey, why are you looking at that one when this is the one we prefer? And I'm like, well, that one doesn't get my production. I can get you the production with this one. Can you? Well, yeah, that one hurts my back. Oh, you didn't tell me that it hurts your back. Now it's an ergonomic issue. Now it's I'm not going to let you go out there and hurt your back all day. You should have said that at the beginning. So that's when we started looking at alternatives to the actual mowers. Because at one point, 2.5 years ago, I didn't think the technology was going to get there for what I wanted. And I was getting locked into a time frame where I was going to have to go get something now. And then, no kidding, a couple of things happened. One is GPS units to track large fleets, large logistics fleets, right? GPS units on 18-wheelers. They miniaturized and they were actually selling them to put on your lawnmower. And so we bought the software. I started tracking. Now I can see what my actual production is. Now I can make the real business case to fight with city council about the funding. Now I can, with confidence, I can say, this is what I'll end up getting. This is what we'll get out of this. Going to cost a little bit more than your regular mower, but this is what we'll get. So it was a pretty long process. COVID hit in the middle of it, and I thought, I'm going to leave. We're not going to have robotic mowers, and I don't know what I'm doing anyway, so it's okay. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for that. Nick, let's go to you.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and I think a lot of times people get so swept up in innovation, new technology, robotics, AI. You're talking about cutting the grass, which is a very mundane task. But even in that, you've got people who, that's my Zen time. I get to see things come through, and I can see that I've done work for the day, and that adds value. That makes me feel like I've accomplished something today. So I wonder if hearing your case study as the early adopter and really just making decisions based on that. The first being, I'm going in, we're going to see what happens. I have goals and I'm going to see what tools are out there. And I think that's, the organizational challenge is, where do you want to be on that, early adopter, innovator, oh, this is working, I should get on board, or, oh no, everybody's doing it, now I have to catch up, and that kind of spectrum there. So I wonder if organizations wouldn't benefit from having kind of a research and development, like, okay, we're going to go play with these toys, you guys keep doing the work, and we'll come to you when we have something. That may not be in the budget for so many things. But I know
that's a very good, that's a very good question. We, again, with this culture shift, we brought in new people, and the city management was focused on this innovation. There's a Bloomberg Business School adaptation called "What Works Cities," and cities are actually graded on their innovation, their technology, and their forward thinking, and their community outreach, and how well they serve the constituents. Our city manager said, we're going to do this. So the first thing he stood up was a Department of Data and Innovation. And we were able to partner with them and bring out a PhD candidate, a PhD who was looking to build his own robotic mower. And when he brought out his equipment back in 2022, again, through that cycle of the last 5 years, it was not impressive. I was going to have to send somebody out with a truck and a load of batteries, and he was going to be changing batteries in an army of these things all day long. And it wasn't meeting what I thought that production rate capability was going to be. But we had the opportunity to work with him. He was called Hire Henry. Anyway, he learned what he needed to learn to meet the customer's needs and made changes to what he had. That innovation wrote up a report that went to What Works Cities. I'm over here writing everything I can down, documenting that we did this. And at one point I'm like, okay, well, that won't work, but what will? And then through the GPS process and the tracking, and at the same time, the industry, I think, finally caught up. And part of what, this is kind of a side, but part of what drove that is all of these solar panels out there in these farms now, right? In these lots on posts, somebody's got to cut the grass under those solar panels. And so the folks that were focused on golf courses and not focused on airports saw another line of business out there with these solar farms out there that need to be cut. So they just kind of caught up with us. It kind of all came together. But if we hadn't been engaged, if we hadn't been looking for the last 5 years, seems like forever. And I love your comment about you're just mowing grass, because when she calls me, I'm like, I just cut grass. It is funny that it does fit as a case study, but and one you wouldn't expect. Look, I was a helicopter pilot in the Navy. I'm out here cutting grass now. It's kind of funny, but so thank
you. Yeah, it's great when the tool matches the job. I know I currently work in restaurants, and I've seen a technology integration where the servers have essentially the POS in their hand. It drives me up a wall because it feels like they're staring at their phone and they're not engaging in hospitality. So I think is another kind of cultural question is, does the technology do the job, or are we just using the bells and whistles to use the bells and whistles? And I think that's where people get very nervous of, why is a robot going to take my job? But, in my case, I would say I want the human there to give the extra experience where, with mowing the grass, particularly in an airfield, like, let's take some safety into the equation and put less bodies in harm's way.
Right. And that goes back to, if you look at solar energy and wind energy, everybody thinks it's a one-for-one replacement, and that's not, right? It's an augmentation. And this is the same thing here. We're not losing bodies. We're not taking away. It's an augmentation to the workforce we already have.
Nick, I love your use case there on the restaurants and the food industry. Robotics are a really interesting thing that are being integrated there as well, right? For the expo, for delivery to tables, there's even robotics now in the kitchen that will produce a precise recipe over and over and over. You can replicate it. That's being tested out in hotel kitchens and some different kitchens like that. So thanks for bringing that use case to the table as well. I think it's an interesting one when you think about the dynamics in a restaurant and that human touch there and having the human service piece of it.
Yeah, I'd love to go to one of those totally automated restaurants once, just to try it out, But I like talking to servers. Thank you very much for that. Lee, let's go to you.
No, I love this. I love this conversation. Having worked in technology for, longer than I care to admit, I've seen this firsthand. One of my first, early out of college jobs was working on a project to bring in a new technology. And we had at least one guy decide to retire rather than, implement this new technology. He was barely using the old technology, and he's just not doing it. And he retired. And okay, but it's such an important thing, because so many of these, so many of the innovators don't think about the consequences. And actually, Ken made an important thing about unintended consequences. I'm going to put in all these solar panels. Well, the grass still grows. People don't think about that. They just think, I got a huge field, I'm going to put up solar panels, and then, well, the grass is still in the field. And that's an important part. And they think, oh, well, it's under something. Yeah, but the sun moves, right? So you're still going to have grass. And we all, any of us who have yards or whatever, you're going to get the best grass ever in places you don't want it. So, it is such an important thing. But the bottom up on this is fantastic, because really there are two sides to this coin. You got the innovator, you got the person with their head in the clouds and the what ifs and everything else. That person very rarely thinks about the unintended consequences, very rarely thinks about the effects on the people. So you need the practical side, you need the other side, you need the person who goes, yes, but, and a lot of people, I don't want that guy, he's a naysayer. Well, no, he's the realist. He's going to be the one that's going to keep you from, falling flat on your face. And you have to have that. And really, when you're talking about bringing in, I love what Ken said about, augmenting. So much of this technology over time has been an augmentation, but people were scared. Well, we're going to bring in robots on the assembly line. Oh, there goes my job. Oh, no, no, not necessarily. But we got to communicate that. We got to talk to the people. We got to say, okay, Ken, I've loved everything you've said here about, getting the feedback on, well, does this work? Well, no, well, then why? Why doesn't this work? Give me something. Oh, well, it hurts my back. Well, that's important, you know, and that also cuts out of my workers' comp. That's more money out of my budget. But these are important things. And so when you go to the people and say, okay, so if I get you a new tool that will make your life better, what does that look like? I mean, like this longshoreman thing is a great example. Well, they're worried about losing their jobs. I get that, but it's a very, very manual process that could be much better and could ultimately help the consumer by lowering prices. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do a phased approach, and you could actually use just natural attrition. People retire, people get other jobs. You don't have to fire people. When you plan this stuff out properly and you engage those people internally, what would make your life better? What could we do that would make it easier on you? What would make you more productive? Hey, by the way, we really value you and want to keep you, so we want to help you here. And so if you start that on the beginning and you involve them in the process, then the fear mongering is not as big of a thing of, oh my God, they're trying to replace me. Oh, the cashier, they're going to put this touch screen thing in and I won't be able to order. And, to Nick's point, people like talking to a person. I mean, how many have you seen up there on the phone? Somebody's calling a customer support person, agent, they don't want to talk to the computer voice. And I totally get what Nick's saying about the POS on the thing. I can see the utility. Okay, I type your order in, I read it back to you, it's right, I hit go, it shows up in the kitchen, cuts down on issues, because I mean we've all had that person up there and they don't write anything down. Some of them are fantastic. Everything comes out and they know right where it goes. And some it's like, excuse me, I had the steak, not the fish. And what I personally like is when they bring that little machine to your table when you go to pay, and they do it right there in front of you. And you beep, there's your computer, there's your thing, here's your card. And I don't have to get up and walk over somewhere. Somebody's not taking, especially today, nobody's walking off with my credit card. And I'm able to get out. I'm able to walk out the door, and for them, I've just cleared a table so they can bring in the next group. So it's a win-win there.
Right. So you're looking at that augmentation, and that was, maybe the goal was larger than that, but that's still the movement forward, right? Maybe that's the shift to C instead of going straight to B.
Exactly, and you're helping both the consumer and the employee. And that, I think, is where a lot of places go wrong. They focus on, I can do this faster and get more money from the employee. And they're losing great employees. Whatever.
I will tell you that this started when I saw a Pebble Beach mower. It was at the Pebble Beach Golf Club. John Deere rolled out a mower, and it was very similar to what we had. It was a large 1445, 72-inch deck. And I was like, okay, here we go. And then COVID hit, and John Deere backed away from working with a company out of Germany to do that augmentation, and my dream was kind of dashed. And then Data and Innovation said, well, there's this partnership, and then the GPS. So it all kind of lined up, and we didn't give up on it. But I absolutely expect to fail. I absolutely expect to deploy 3 mowers and then find out, oops, this isn't what I wanted to do. And no kidding, right now, Needville, somebody called me from Needville, John Deere is re-engaged with the mower that originally I thought would have been the answer. So we'll see what happens. And it may be that we're going to shift and go to, again, go back to B from C or whatever. So we'll see what happens. I absolutely expect that with this effort's going to fail, but we'll see what happens.
Well, in growing up on a farm, John Deere, it is the king. So thank you very much for that. Alexander and LindaAnn, I'm so glad you guys put your hands up because I was going to ask you some questions. So Alexander, let's go to you first.
Okay. Do you want to ask me your question? Because I had a question for Ken.
No, you go first and then I'll ask you.
Okay.
Because you need to answer it anyway.
Okay. So Ken, being you're the director part, how much kind of flexibility does your organization empower you to be able to make these type of purchases and be able to kind of get through the process of being able to determine if it's the right fit without a lot of paperwork and bogging you down? That's kind of my question.
Absolutely great question. Again, when I spoke to the shift in the culture that happened about 3 years ago, we were, again, you don't make a mistake, and your procurement was very rigid, and it would take forever, months. And then it was a decision that was made very autocratic at the top. With this culture shift, we've got a very supportive staff. The city manager actually explained to the mayor and the city council that you hired a change agent and that you are paying me based on the mistakes I made. So, or make. So when I now to be honest though, there's been a lot of backup research in this. I did write a cost benefit analysis plan, and the city has now shifted towards, with the city works, data driven decisions, data driven initiatives. So it played out. I didn't make anything up. I wanted the confidence of the GPS numbers. That's our production rate. This is what I can do with this. This is our projections. And no kidding, it's going to be about an 8% shift. When I get to B or C out there, when I get to the run, it'll be an 8% savings in labor. I mean, that's to me, 8% is pretty huge when you look at where we're going. But yeah, so that's a very good question. They're very supportive. I am number 3 here at the airport. There's a whole bunch of high paid people between me and those folks. And none of them stopped for a second to say we can't do this or we can't afford this or what happens if it fails. It just moved on. So
that sounds really brilliant because it sounds like the GPS data is so vital, especially when you say you need to be able to pitch it.
Well, so the GPS data gave me the confidence in my gut observations about their production rates. The GPS, I was expecting a number different because math was a hobby, not a game in school. So anyway, I expected to see something different, but the GPS really kind of validated my observations, and that gave me the confidence to say, this is what we're going to end up saving. This will be the process. So
a final question. Before the change in your culture, could you have been able to have gotten that GPS system easily before?
I will be here 9 years next month, and I can say with a high level of confidence, without a GPS tracker, no, I would not have been able to get. We would have stayed with status quo. Lee, to your point, there are people that would rather retire. There are some naysayers, but the culture is shifting. One of the things that I wrote in my notes, Emmy, was that that culture shift was huge and is what paid off. We are looking for people that are engaged. We are looking for people that will take risks. We are getting better, quicker at making the right personnel decisions. We're hiring not so much experience. The experience will get you the interview, but we're hiring the person that will get along, that is bold enough to make a suggestion. And that's been a huge shift, and that's going to take some time as well. But I keep drawing the curve. We are getting better, faster at those things that allow us to make these changes and these decisions.
All right, here's my question. So, and because what does the future hold when it comes to technology? I'm totally lost. You've got some great insights on where we're going, and we've been mainly talking about those manual labor jobs, cutting grass, working in a restaurant, but especially with AI and robotics, it's now coming into the office. So, if I am working in an organization, I'm middle management. How is my job going to change? And do we also have to now start thinking about, just like with those people cutting grass, where we're not going to, let you go. We actually have more work for you. What's that transition going to look like?
I'm so glad you asked that question too, because I don't just cut grass. There are electric airplanes on the horizon. We're a fixed base operator, so the city owns the fixed base operator. For those of you that don't know, a fixed base operator was the person that, 100 years ago, when they flew biplanes and the pilot's face was in the weather, they would get on the radio and say, "I need to land to get gas," and somebody would run out and light the smudge pots. That person listening on the radio that got you gas, coffee, ice, newspapers, we still do that today. That's the FBO. So we're a gas station. Okay. The FBO is the gas station. We put gas in planes. When we go electric, we employ right now 45 to 50 people. We make a pretty substantial profit on that gas. What does that look like when we're charging batteries for electric planes? Or I don't know if you've heard, but we're getting Whisk, which is this completely autonomous, pilotless air mobility platform that's supposed to be here by 2030. It's a great story. It's a sidelight to all this, but one of the things we wanted to do when we revamped our goals and our outreach was to partner with the next workforce, the future workforce. One day we got a call from Arizona State University, said, "I got a capstone project. Would you be interested in helping us out with our seniors?" We said yes. They said, "You'll come up with the topics, you will grade them, they'll give presentations." We had never done this. And the only reason we were doing it was to invest in the future workforce, to provide those folks an opportunity that are looking at aviation for their careers. This was during COVID, so it was 2020. One of the topics we gave them was, what would air mobility look like on our airport? How would we do that? We're just a regional GA, but what would that look like? We did the capstone, everything went fine. They gave us a great plan. We wrote it up, we stuck it on a shelf somewhere. 2 years later, Whisk, which is a subsidiary of Boeing, comes to town looking for a place to set down in the Houston area. They came to us, and because we had looked at it, we're like, "Hey, we've got this plan," and we could play like we're doing now, stump the dummy, and he could ask us questions and we could provide our answers. And of all the airports in the Houston area, they chose Sugar Land Regional Airport to put down their footprint for Whisk. Now, the way it was sold originally was Uber Air. You would pick up your phone, you would pay the black Uber, whatever it is, and you would get your boarding pass, and then you would show up at the top of a building and get in your pilotless vehicle, and it's going to take you from point A to point B. That's probably going to change quite a bit, but we're focused and dedicated on being the first air mobility taxi type provider here in Houston area. So I hope that answered your question. I don't know what the future really holds for us, but I know that we're going to find out. We're going to be forward looking and see what comes. So.
Well, I just saw a documentary on self-driving cars. I don't think I'm going to get in a self-driving plane for a while. But Alexander, what are you seeing from where you sit?
I think it depends on very heavily the culture of the company and their adaptability to the technologies that are available to them. A lot of companies aren't making the investment into the ability that's going to unlock like AI. They have a lot of data, but it's not data that's easily accessible to AI. So maybe a lot of PDFs or stuff like that. That's still quite hard for AI to really synthetically digest and use properly and get accurately and then make business decisions for. And so if you're not making those investments, and a lot of companies right now are kind of going, "We're here, you need to be here, we're trying to go here," and it's not working, and then they're not wondering why it's so expensive. Those are kind of the reasons. So if you're in a company that is making those investments, yeah, you're going to see your job change a lot. I think exactly like Ken has said, you're going to find a lot more work is probably available for you, but it's going to be new work. It's not going to be the work you've been doing.
Hey, more room for training.
Right. We have embraced AI and ChatGPT. And again, we stood up a governance committee. Do we write a cumbersome policy, or do we just give guiding principles? We've gone through all of that. We're still doing that. One of the first things we did when we're trying to go through a mission vision statement was went to ChatGPT and said, write a mission vision statement for the airport. It was all wrong. It was a great exercise to see what the limitations are out there of that. So, but we're doing those things. My boss says all the time, "Why aren't you using ChatGPT?" because I'm a creative.
Well, we were talking about the writer's strike earlier, and I hear that, Chat GTP can write a film script, but you don't want to shoot it. You then want to give it to a writer and have them actually, improve it. LindaAnn, let's go to you.
You guys just created the perfect segue for what I wanted to make as a point. And that is, when we embrace AI, it's important that we also communicate the responsibility that we have as the person or the leader that is in charge of the utilization of that, right? Because often you do have to look at it and go, whoa, that's not right. So the whole expertise that the human brings to the table needs to be used to make sure that what AI or robot or whatever is doing is ethical, is correct, is palatable to the humans that it interfaces with, all those kinds of things. So there is a real responsibility to that. And one of my favorite sayings is, AI won't necessarily take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI will. And and so the efficiencies that it can provide to those people is enormous. And I use ChatGPT to give me structures and things like that. That just goes that I don't have to do all the homework first, because it can tap into resources in a heartbeat that would take me a long time. So using it within the right capacity that it has. And then really the human part of that also is in the management or leadership of it is having that clear communication with the others that are utilizing it so that they don't get frustrated. In other words, and this is true for no matter the technological improvements that we've been through in the past 50 years. Even when word processing first came out and people would get frustrated, well, the things are jumping all over the page and whatever. And I don't know if any of you remember that, but you'd hit enter and it would like skew the whole document, right? And so to understand how you just look into the codes and see all the codes that are in there that screwed you up, and you can just clean it up and make it work for you, or how you can see that as you go, changes it. So bringing that level or kind of insight so that people can use it properly and don't get frustrated by what it's doing and having that obscure its actual capabilities.
There's something so important you mentioned there about the responsibility piece of that I just wanted to touch on one time, LindaAnn. One of the use cases that I'm looking into now is surgical robots. So there are surgical robots that are being run or monitored by doctors, but they are the critical factor when you think about the surgery. They have to be there. The robotic can't be the decision maker. The human has to have the accountability and the responsibility behind the scenes. And that has to continue to be explicitly stated and embedded within companies. I mean, that's a really extreme case, but I love to use that case because of it. I mean, that's a major impact to our humanity, surgical, use cases anyway.
I think that's a great example, because the robot can actually be more precise than a human can, right? But that doesn't mean they're precise in the right place. So there's that wonderful integration that can happen there that provides the best of both worlds and the best possible outcome as a result. So that's a wonderful example.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's so critical.
And LindaAnn, real quick, you've already kind of talked about it, but especially from that HR perspective, we're going to go through a time of change. But it's not like the first change we've ever had. Is this just another change, and we have to let employees know who may be afraid that their job is going to change? Well, your job is going to change, but we've been through change before, and you can handle it.
Absolutely. I mean, every time you get a promotion, your job changes.
Yeah, good point.
Right? So this is just we need to look at it as a tool, right? And so and think about this. Okay, I was raised by someone who was, very, a car guy, mechanically oriented, and he would go out there and try to fix the car, and he'd be out there cussing. My mother would take us to the shopping mall, so we weren't around him for this, but because he was trying to get something off and it wasn't coming off. And then he would go to the store and get the right tool, and it took him 10 minutes. And so there's a real parallel there. When you have the right tools, it can really make life a whole lot easier if you just go ahead and say, go get that tool.
Yeah, I've lived that life. Thank you very much for that, LindaAnn. Let's go to you, Laura.
Hey there, thanks. I liked that idea of convincing people that it's using a tool to help you work better. I know for me in my personal life, I have not been able to embrace Chat GPT. I just can't get myself. I hate how everything has an app now and I have to manage everything through an app. And I've not made it into my personal life, but I recently started using it with work that my company has an internal AI that we can use. And the perk of that, as someone who is not a techie working in tech, is that it's integrated into our work products. So if I see an email and they're referencing some term or product I don't know, I can go in the AI tool and say, what is this? And it will give me a summary. But it's been interesting to kind of get myself to break into it and think of how it can help me work smarter and not harder, right? And save me those time. So one of the things kind of circling it back around in this hour-long conversation was that idea of it's a culture shift, but culture is built off of the individuals, and the individuals have to kind of make that step in the direction. And I wanted to kind of share one of the things that sparked me to finally do it is I got to see a demo in the company before a big conference that they were going to show off to a bunch of customers, our new tools, our new electronic health records, and all our fancy gizmos and gadgets we've added into it. And they let the employees join a demo and get to see it. And the idea of letting our physicians use this electronic health record, and it's got all this automation built into it, and how it will help them work smarter and not harder, right? That they can, referring to Nick's example with the servers, the physicians are going to be able to put down the device and interact with their patients to really get that human connection. And then the device is going to be able to type up the notes. The physician still has to look at it, still has to correct it, still has to view it. But now the physician doesn't have to take time afterwards to type or be typing in the middle of the conversation, right? Because I know for me, I've been in those positions, and it does hurt as a patient to have those interactions. So the idea that of seeing it in real time, how you can bring the human element back because you're using it efficiently, has been really interesting to me. So I love getting to hear examples in other industries, like Ken's example. And I'm a pilot's wife, so I love hearing the airport application of it as well. So that was my 2 cents.
Well, I'd let your husband fly me in a plane. I'm still not taking that self-driving.
Yeah, I'm never getting in a plane that flies on itself.
So
there you go.
That Uber Air self-driving plane, there'll be a pilot somewhere monitoring in a Connex box somewhere in a basement or whatever, but there'll be somebody.
Great. I feel so much better. Alexander, let's go to you.
So I'm going to loop back kind of to your question, but also Laura just brought up a really good point. I think it was Volkswagen that just made all of their car user manuals where you could actually just chat bot with it. It makes it a lot simpler. How do I change a tire? How do I do my oil? And these types of fun little things. And I think when we look at the speed of change, there's a lot of anxiety around it, but there's also a high potential for burnout. For those of us in IT, Tuesday is a fear to me because it's Patch Tuesday when all the big tech companies like to release their patches. This last Tuesday, some 2022 servers just randomly decided to upgrade their entire operating systems due to a certain patch, so it's always a scary day. But this is one of those aspects where we can start to be very mindful as leaders to lay out the roadmap and make sure that we're looking at how much change are we bringing, how much change can our employees actually handle and not burn them out with these changes and be very data oriented, as Ken has already pointed out, that data driven organization, which we're all about here, is so important.
Yeah, and like I said, I expect to fail. We're going to crawl, walk, run. We may not get to run. We may crawl. We may walk. They may collect dust. We'll see what happens, but we're going to try.
And with that, our time is up. Ken, thank you very much. It's been really informative, and thank you once again for sharing your experience. And I actually do feel a little bit better now about technology taking over the world. With that, Emmy, let me pass it back to you for some final thoughts, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's going to happen next week.
Yeah, absolutely. My kind of final thoughts, a little bit of a funny one. But I've brought this up before, but there's something called cave people, right? Those constantly against virtually everything. And I actually love cave people in organizations. They really help you be the gauge. How are your people adopting the changes? How are they concerned? How do they need to be loved on a little bit more, right? So your cave people really help you be human centric as a leader. Because they'll tell you what's wrong. They'll tell you what they're against. They'll tell you what their concerns are. And as you're integrating technology and wanting to remain human focused, those people can really help be your temperature gauge, right, in your organizations. And so the culture shift that just was mentioned needs to consider what can your people take and how fast can they take it. And so that's I really appreciate that final thought there, Alexander. I think it's a really critical one to remain human-centric. And next week, we're going to continue this conversation. We'll be talking about building trust and inclusion in what I've called tech hybrid teams. And those are teams that actually have a team member that is a technology. So restaurants, if you have a robotic that delivers to your tables, actually the airport, they introduced their tool Scrubby as their latest employee on social media, right? So that's a tech hybrid team, a team that actually has a team member that is considered a team member that's a technology tool. So we'll be talking about building trust and inclusion, so continuing that conversation. And we've got someone coming from the Houston Robot Lab to talk about how we do that and augment and build some trust and inclusion on those teams.
That sounds so cool. And Lee, you're going to be doing the networking again at 6:30 Eastern tonight. Join Lee. I hear it's a great time, continues and goes on all night long. I'm going to try and make it tonight, so maybe I'll see you there. And also, do check the CBOC website for all the upcoming events. And every Thursday, we are here at 12 Eastern. Jump online and share your voice with the rest of us. All right, thank you very much, everyone. It's been a great discussion as always. Emmy, if you want to count us out of here, we'll see everyone back in 1 week's time.
I will. 3, 2, and 1.